Howdy, I'm Grey Pilgrim. I'm just cleaning a few guns and thinking about life in general. These are, by the way, Civil War vintage. These are both Confederate guns. This one is a Texas gun. It's called the Dance revolver, produced by a fellow by the name of James Henry Dance, or J.H. Dance and Brothers Co. And they had a factory just north of, I think it's called Columbia, Texas. It's on the Brazos River and a bit north of Houston and Galveston. And they produced these during the Civil War. They're originally a producer of farm equipment, but they really wanted to do their part for the war effort. Well, what's interesting about this is a sort of a hybrid, built without any kind of patent rights, but built nonetheless. The most common pistols at that time were two of them. One was the 1851 Colt, and the other was the Colt Dragoon. And basically, this is an 1851 Colt frame with a Dragoon barrel, and I mean, it's the same length as a Dragoon. And it's in 44 with a 44 barrel on it. And it's a interesting pistol. It has one major difference. Now, when they were making these, all they could get were slabs of iron. They didn't make them out of steel, they made them out of iron. Usually these cylinders were made out of twisted iron just to keep them a little bit stronger so that they could take the pressure. But the rest of it was made of just slab iron. Well, the slab was that wide, so they had to machine it without the recoil shield here. You notice on a Dragoon, you see the rounded part of the behind the cylinder here? That's the recoil shield. Now, that was a nice cost savings and whatnot for these guys, because they didn't have to take another slab and cut it out and make these complicated shapes and somehow weld it or braze it together. So instead they just made it without. Well, that's well and good unless you have a chain fire, because if you have a chain fire, all of these will just flash directly backwards and into your face, and that's not exactly a fun thing to have happen to your face. But I think they made about 500 of these or thereabouts, and it's by that means it's like one of the most pronounced successful revolvers of the South in the Civil War. South didn't make many. The other two that I think really were contenders were the Leech and Rigdon, and this one. This is a Griswold and Gunnison. Well, Griswold was a fellow, he was a northerner who came south because his sympathies were with the South, and he started a cotton gin factory and a grist mill and a few other things, and he put them together in a particular area. He called it, I think it was near Macon, Georgia, and he called it Griswoldville. And he started a cotton gin factory, and when the war started, he turned that into an arms factory and started making these revolvers. A fellow named Gunnison had an idea for a pistol, which basically is a copy of a Colt 1851, and only made with brass. And they started making them at that cotton gin factory, which they continued to do until Georgia was overrun by the Northerners, and Griswoldville was burned to the ground. Such a shame. By the way, the Dance brothers went back to making farm equipment after the war, and they were still in business until 1900, when the Galveston flood, the hurricane that became known as the Galveston flood, basically wiped out their factory there, just completely wiped it off the earth. But this one, Griswold and Gunnison, this was far more of these were made than these. If you ever saw that series called Hell on Wheels, the fellow was carrying one of these. And it's supposed to be a very nice, well-built pistol, or revolver. They called them pistols then. And Now, I think these are both, by the way, replicas made by Pieta. Pieta makes, I have a Leech and Rigdon. I have a Spiller and Burr, but I think it's made by Army San Marcos. And, you know, that I collect these things. Oh, and I also have a Pieta Lamotte, which is the, well, it's sort of the Walker of the South, you might say. Each of these things had usually there's an entrepreneur, you know, money man, and an inventor or a gunsmith or blacksmith who came up with a gun design, who puts together a factory. And so that's like Griswold and Gunnison, Spiller and Burr, Leech and Rigdon. And that's how, or Dance Brothers. Actually, there was actually a cousin he had hired as well. So it's a bunch of the Dance family that was in that business. And usually, unless they had a government contract of some kind, and Lamotte, he had that because his cousin-in-law, his cousin married a fellow by the name of General Beauregard. Well, Beauregard was the procurement officer for the Confederacy, and he decided that his cousin would provide a bunch of arms for the South. And he and a whole bunch of other generals carried the Lamotte revolver. Lamotte was special because it was an 8-shot with an extra barrel down the middle. That was it was called the scatter shot or the snake shot revolver, because it had a shotgun barrel as a central pin of the cylinder. And it's an interesting pistol. I've done a video on it before, but I may do another. But I've done videos on all of these before, but I just think it's an interesting, well, it's interesting, you know. It's the Civil War. It's the, or as the South calls it, the War of Northern Aggression, or the Second American Revolution. You know, depends on how you look at things, I suppose. Perspective. And God bless Robert E. Lee. Anyway, that's just what I've been up to today. By the way, damn good stuff. You know, I use it all the time. And on black powder, it's the best. And for lubrication, nothing beats Rem oil. My commercial for the day, I'm not getting sponsored by anybody, but hey, they do damn good products. And I'll be more than happy to promote them. Anyway, happy trails.